Coming up on the next edition of Power in Politics, 2 years of campaigning comes down to this Tuesday. Where are we in the waning days of the presidential campaign, and what happens next? Also, our predictions on who wins and why, including the hotly contested amendments on the ballot in Florida to legalize recreational marijuana and expand reproductive rights. Hello and welcome to another edition of Power in Politics. I'm your host, Frank Cipolla. Power in Politics is a weekly, right-down-the-middle look at the top stories affecting the state, with a special emphasis on the psychology behind the decisions and issues that affect our lives. I'm joined, as I am every week, by my co-host, longtime clinical and Emmy Award-winning political psychologist, Dr. Bart Rossi. Doctor, welcome.
Great to be here again, Frank.
All right, well, depending on when you are watching this show, we are days or just hours away from Election Day, and it's been quite a presidential campaign with the usual finger-pointing, policy pronouncements, and of course a last-minute replacement at the top of the Democratic ticket. It has been an unusual campaign. Again, just days, hours away from Election Day. Where do we stand?
Well, Frank, as a psychologist, I think it's a giant approach avoidance conflict in many ways, all right? I think voters are making a decision. Are they approaching one candidate or avoiding a particular candidate? We have the boss, the authoritarian personality, the former president, Donald Trump, and he's projecting that. He's been pretty harsh, rather dark in his words, but he wants to project that serious boss-like personality versus Kamala Harris, who's trying to be a winning personality and approach everyone and be a winning personality in that regard. So the voters have to decide who do they believe and where are they going. And that's what we're in the process right now.
All right. Since the beginning of the year, and we started in syndication the first week in January, we have been covering the entire race, the primaries. Here we are at the very end. We're going to make a couple of predictions now with the qualifier, however, that these are not endorsements in any way, shape, or form. We invite you, of course, to vote your conscience. But we've been watching the polls, and I'm going to talk about the polls in my commentary. We've been examining the race for the last some odd weeks as we headed to Election Day. What does your gut tell you? And again, this is not an endorsement. What's your gut tell you?
Well, there are two main factors here for me. And one of it is the fact that I think Kamala Harris is going to have a better ground game than Donald Trump.
And does.
And what Donald Trump did is he farmed out to outside organizations to do his ground game, that is, get the vote out. And Kamala Harris has offices all over these states, especially the swing states. And I think she's going to be making a really strong effort to pull the base out, to pull more voters out. And that's a key factor, okay? And also, there are a significant number of Republicans who are going in the direction of Kamala Harris. Now, when I say significant, I don't mean 40 or 50%. Maybe it's 10%, 12%. That's a significant number when you have an election like this. Mm-hmm. So I'm not too sure about the polls, but we'll get to the prediction in a minute.
But I want you to make your prediction now.
Well, given
prediction avoidance.
Yes. Okay. Well, given those two factors, I think that I'm going to give the edge to Harris on a 7-5 bet, Frank.
Oh, okay. So now we're back to Las Vegas. Okay.
I don't think this is not a 10-1 score. You know, we definitely have a winner and all that. But I think the edge is to Harris because of these factors. Republicans going in her direction, not just Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney, but others that have come out. And also the ground game. I think those two factors are going to end up being a big deal on Election Day.
All right. So you're predicting that Harris will win 7-5.
7-5.
Those are I'm not going to give you odds.
Go ahead.
I'm going to say that all our viewers have been watching us, and we thank you throughout Florida, parts of Alabama, parts of Georgia as well. It's, again, not an endorsement. But I would happen to say they have polled Trump in 2016, in 2020 as well. I think a lot of people vote for him. They don't say they will vote for him, but when they get in the booth, they do. I think that's going to be counteracted this year, quite frankly, by all the women who are coming out because they're angry about the Roe decision.
Right.
And I don't think they're being counted as well in the numbers that they're going to come out. I think they might say they'll vote for Trump, but once they get into the booth, they'll change their mind. I'm going to say that Harris wins the election. I'm going to say that she probably wins with a significant number of electoral votes. Maybe not as much as the last time, but I'm giving the edge to Harris as well.
Give me a number. What are the odds? Come on, give me a number here. What are you saying? I'm saying 7-5. That's what I'm saying.
I don't bet, so I don't know what kind of odds to give. I'm just saying I have a feeling in these waning days that women will come out in large numbers and counteract those Trump voters who are generally underpolled.
Okay, well, I think that's a good point.
All right.
I think so.
So
the abortion issue could be more prominent than what some of the polls are even saying.
I think it's going to be very prominent.
Yeah.
So you're saying Harris, I'm saying Harris as well again. We're just predicting here.
We'll see where we are next week. We'll see if we'll
know soon enough.
We're on target or not here.
All right, time now for one of our regular segments, a commentary from Dr. Bart Rossi that we call the Rossi Rant.
And Frank, today I'd like to talk again about the 60% model here in Florida to solve any particular amendment. You have to have 60% of the voters. And what I'm saying is this is absolutely preposterous. It's ridiculous. And it just bothers me as a psychologist because let's think about this in terms of the basic psychology. What's happening is that let's suppose the election is, let's say 58 or 59% of the people say yes to like Amendment 4 or Amendment 3. They're the two most controversial. Well, that means that the winner at 58 or 59% is the loser.
Mm-hmm. The overwhelming winner.
Yes. And the people who are like at 40% or 41%, they are the winner. Where in a democracy does the strong minority become the winner? And what makes this even more objectionable to me is that Governor DeSantis said, correctly by the way, that he won in a political landslide with 59%. Mm-hmm. Well, if he won in a landslide, what does that mean if there's a 59% or 58% on this score? It just doesn't make any sense, and I'm totally against the 60% rule.
All right, you're going on the record. No odds, though.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Doctor. Coming up, we look at those statewide races and our predictions as to who wins and why, and that's next on Power and Politics. Welcome back to Power and Politics. I'm Frank Cipolla, joined by clinical and political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi. Well, there's been a lot of money spent in support for and against two very important amendments on the Florida state ballot this election day. Dr. Rossi mentioned them in the last block. If you've been watching any TV or you've been scrolling on the internet, you know we're talking about Amendment 3, which would legalize recreational marijuana, and Amendment 4, which would increase the amount of time a woman in the state has to get an abortion. Okay, let's tackle these one at a time. Let's tackle them first. Number 3, okay. Recreational marijuana. Do you think it will be passed, and why?
I think it will be passed because most people see this, whether they're on the right or when they're on the left or in the middle. People think of alcohol and they think of other drugs that they take, and they think marijuana should be legal. So I think it's probably going to go in the right direction. Most of the polling, even though we have our doubts about polling, say it's probably going to pass. But I say yes to this, and it makes sense.
I agree with you. I think that the vast majority of Floridians, in this case 60%, will legalize marijuana. That is Amendment 3, recreational use.
And let me just say one other thing, Frank. As we mentioned here on the show before, marijuana is not a gateway drug. And most people understand
Some would argue.
Some would argue, but it's not. Well, alcohol could be then, or drinking whatever could be a lead into something else. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, it's not a gateway drug. Because you smoke marijuana or you use it does not mean that you're going to graduate to heroin or cocaine. It does not mean that. So most people get it, and I think you're right. It will pass.
Well, medical marijuana is approved here in the state of Florida, so this would be the logical next step. Yeah. All right, let's continue our guessing game when it comes to whether or not the abortion amendment, which would extend the amount of time a woman can get an abortion in the state, passes or gets voted down. This is a tricky one because the polls, again, and we're not thrilled with the polls because we don't believe they're accurate in a lot of cases. But how do you see this one coming out?
I think it's going to be close. And I think the reason is because the governor and his staff are really pushing to get that 40% to say no to this. So I think it could be close. I think it's going to be definitely a majority of people, well over 50%. But I'm concerned, as I said before, about that 58 or 59% number. I mean, it just seems that most women, Republican, Democrat, Independent, want to say yes to this amendment. They don't want the government to control their body. Mm-hmm. Makes pretty good sense to me. So I have a feeling that it could pass, but I think it's going to be a close call on this one, and I think the arguments are there for it to pass. But there's a real push to try to suppress this.
Well, let's talk about the politics of this.
Yeah.
Governor DeSantis, as you know, attempted to send a cease and desist order to stations running pro-abortion commercials, which flopped in the state court system. However, he's hanging his hat on this because he wants to run in 28. He wants to be able to tell what's ever left of the Trump support group that he was successful in this. So I mean, this is very important for him.
It's important to him, but Frank, think about it this way: it's the freedom state, according to the governor, but he didn't really want this to even be an amendment.
Right.
And now he's got it at 60%. It's another hurdle. And he's making it a bigger hurdle by actually campaigning against it and actively campaigning against the Amendment 4. So is there could this backfire in this election? It could have an effect against the Republican Party to a certain extent, because I think, again, most people on both sides of the aisle would say yes to this.
Well, we've seen in red states like Kansas and Ohio, the voters voting in favor of more extensive reproductive rights.
Right.
I don't see how this does not pass. I'm going with you. I think it will pass. It will be really, really close, unlike the recreational marijuana amendment. But I think this passes as well.
Okay. I think you're probably
We'll
right.
know.
We'll
know next show.
Yeah.
All right. Also, another big race is Senator Rick Scott. He's running for re-election against Democratic opponent, former Congresswoman Debbie Powell. This race puzzles me. The Democratic Party put extra money in that race in Texas with Colin Allred and Ted Cruz because they think they have a better chance of defeating Ted Cruz, the Republican. Not as much money in Florida. I don't know if they have faith whether or not the Congresswoman could win.
I think the Democrats see Rick Scott as a real challenge. Let's put it that way, okay? Because he's really good at a close election. We know that in his past.
And he has a lot of personal money that he can use.
Yeah, almost unlimited personal money. And what he does very effectively, he tries to get 50% of the vote plus one. He's really not reaching out. He's never been the kind of candidate to reach everyone, like be a winning personality for everyone. He's not that guy. He's very good at trying to get enough people on his side to get 50% plus one. He's good at it. The Democrats know that. But this Debbie Powell, she's a good candidate. I'm not sure about how good her campaign is, but I think she has an outside shot. I'd give her maybe 20 to I would give her 20 to 30% shot of an upset.
I agree with you.
I think that's what I'd say about it.
I wouldn't be surprised if she did win, but I'm going to pick the incumbent Rick Scott. I just think he has a better infrastructure in place. He has unlimited money, as you mentioned a moment ago, so he has to go in as the favorite.
But the women, as you said before, could change that.
That's the wild card. All right, thank you, Doctor. Well, folks move to Florida for the sunshine, but there are times, as you know, when the skies open and it comes down in buckets. When we come back, we determine who was in the sunshine this week and who got caught in the rain with the always popular segment, Sunshine or Showers, when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. The weather can change in a jiffy in Florida, as you never know when you will enjoy the sunshine or when you will be caught without an umbrella. It's time to find out who was in the sunshine this week, who was in the showers in a segment that we call, appropriately enough, Sunshine or Showers. Okay, we start with you, Doctor. Who was in the sunshine this week?
Frank, I have the poll workers in Florida and across the country who are out there doing their job. They're going to be there on Election Day. Some of them volunteer. Some of them get a small amount of pay. Folks that really are involved, they do the best they can. They've been maligned. They've been undercut by all kinds of commentary that's just objectionable to me. Most of these people try to do a good job, whether they're Republican or Democrats, and they need some praise from us. So I'm putting them in the big sunshine.
Those hard workers, they're in the sunshine.
They do a good, they do a good job.
Great job. Under trying circumstances as well.
That's right.
All right.
And for you, who do you have now?
Oh, who do I have in the sunshine?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, I don't know if you saw this story. It's only the second time since we did the show that I'm putting not a person in the sunshine. I am putting an animal, the dog Trooper. Are you familiar with Trooper? No. Trooper is a bull terrier who was found tied to a fence on the side of I-75 just as Hurricane Milton was approaching Tampa. He was saved by a trooper. I am told Trooper has a new home, a wide open yard, and his new owners say they're going to shower him with love and cuddles. Trooper, the 5-year-old bull terrier who was just left alongside the road, and that's a story for another day. But he's found a new home, so Trooper, the dog, is in the sunshine for me today.
Very good. I like that.
Well, you know, with
I
every
didn't notice
sunny
it.
day,
Very good.
it happened last week.
Very
You're
good.
enjoying the
Yeah,
pool,
yeah.
you're out having a barbecue,
Very
clap
good.
of thunder, showers. Who's in the showers for you this week?
In the showers, I have the Surgeon General here in Florida, Surgeon General Lapato. Okay, now this is really kind of confusing to me. He is against Amendment 3. And
that's the
4,
amendment about
but he's-
recreational
Yeah,
marijuana.
marijuana. And he's giving spiritual advice to everyone now on the airwaves that this is not good for you spiritually. If you vote for Amendment 3, this is not a good thing. It's going to hurt you spiritually. Somehow it's going to have an effect on you. And I guess somehow it's going to make you negative personality or something. I'm not quite sure of his logic here. But it makes me think, what kind of a person is this? What kind of spiritual advice are you giving on marijuana? This is a pretty straightforward bill. It makes sense to most people. He's doing this in a very odd, bizarre way, and
Yeah.
it seems like he's trying to undermine the amendment. I don't get good vibrations from this at all.
So
he's in the shower.
He's in the showers this week.
Who do you have?
Who do I have in the
Can you
showers
match
this
that one?
I got somebody I think might be a little worse. Florida State Representative Rick Roth. He is a farmer. He farms his farm in the western part of Palm Beach County. For years, Doctor, decades, he's been talking about we need a comprehensive immigration reform package so we can get immigrants to work on these farms in my district, and all his fellow farmers love him. The other day he decided, okay, I'm going to read right off the Republican sheet, and I'm going to say that we should have a stricter border policy and keep the immigrants out. He flipped like this. And I don't have a great deal of respect for elected officials who say one thing again and again, and then they just stop and flip because somebody tells them it's the right thing to do politically.
We call this in the personality discussion that we have flip-flopping. Of course.
Flip-flopping.
A big flip-flop.
I don't understand. So Rick Roth, if you're watching, State Representative Rick Roth, if you're watching in any number of our affiliates, you are in the showers this week. That's right, I'm pointing at you, Rick Roth.
Good one.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we return, a commentary by yours truly titled, Let's Be Frank, when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back. So here we are. 2 years of campaigning, policy pronouncements, and finger-pointing have brought us here. Tuesday is Election Day. By the time you watch this show next week, the verdict will likely be in. All of us here at Power and Politics urge you to vote and vote your conscience. This is among the few countries in the world where we decide who leads us. Despite their money and influence, the votes of Elon Musk and Mark Cuban are just as equal to ours. The voting booth does not discriminate. What you don't want to do is read the polls and decide your vote doesn't count or is not needed. I know I have talked about this before, but the polls mean nothing. As cliche-ish as it sounds, the only poll that matters is the one on Election Day. In fact, pollsters are a lot like TV weather people. Often they get it right and take credit, but when they're wrong, they brush it off with a myriad of excuses. In 2016, the pollsters predicted Hillary Clinton had an 83% chance of winning. We know how that turned out. Here's my point. The polls, many of which are owned in part by major news organizations, are used to create suspense. In fact, I read a poll the other day that proclaimed the presidential race was as close as it could be, a difference of 1 percentage point. The very last line in that article was telling. It said the same poll had a margin of error of 5 percentage points. It is in the interest of the news media, of which I've been a part for more than 40 years, to make things sound more dire or a particular race closer than it really is. And then when it's not, the political pundits shrug it off, murmur something about how the poll was conducted, and then start conducting a new poll. All's forgotten. I have said on this show before why I think the polls are inaccurate and have been for more than 20 years, and why some are worded in such a way to generate the results they want, to be used later to fuel all sorts of conspiracy theories. Along those lines, let's pledge now to do what we've always done. Accept the results, investigate legitimate concerns, and then move on. In short, be gracious in victory or defeat. We'll be right back. That's it for this week's edition of Power and Politics. On behalf of my co-host, political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi, and the fine people working behind the scenes, thanks for joining us. As always, we'd like to know what you think. Visit us at powerandpolitics.tv or email us at info@powerandpolitics.tv. We'll see you again a week from now at this time and on this same station. Have a great week.